Members of the European Parliament, dear colleagues, good morning. Me too, I'd like to thank Ms. Reding and the EIF for scheduling a breakfast on this topic. While it is often overlooked in the cutting-edge environment that we all operate in, multilingualism is as essential as net neutrality when it comes to maintaining an open and accessible internet. Ironically, I will be delivering this speech in Flinglish, the Flemish version of English, rather than my own mother tongue. I hope you bear with me. I'm representing CENTR, the organization by and for European country code top-level domain managers. These are companies that operate the domains such as .eu, .de or .pt. The domain name system exists for roughly 30 years. It has proven to be a secure and stable system that allowed anyone to register a domain in their preferred top level and get a matching online identity. It also allowed internet users to navigate and send emails without ever having to think twice about the addressing system that supports it. The telltale sign that country code operators have been doing a great job is that the large majority of the overall public has never heard of our existence. And that's probably a good thing, but being invisible, it does slightly make it more difficult to get policy messages across in Brussels, but that's another story. Innovating a complex system such as the DNS is typically a slow-moving exercise. But the exception to this rule was the introduction of the Internationalized Domain Name System, or IDNs. Mind that these are not just about introducing non-Latin scripts, but they allow the use of characters that contain non-standard Latin script letters. An IDN is any domain that contains at least one character that does not contain standard Latin script or a number. So, for example, the French word café is, can be used as an IDN in Belgium and under the .fr domain. Other obvious examples are any Greek word or any Cyrillic word under the relevant domains. For the DNS, the implementation was very complex, and it required not just technical, but also linguistic world-class skills. But collaboration in the Internet Engineering Task Force, in particular within ICANN, of which we have Jean-Jacques representing us today here, and CENTR allowed for the swift introduction of IDNs, especially on the policy issues that were dealt with within ICANN, were quite spectacular in the swiftness in which they occurred. It is a very complex thing to add new character sets. It includes solving the issue of confusing similarity between existing and new IDN domains, etc. Just to give an example on how quick this actually went in a technical environment, it took about 10 years for the introduction of the new GTLDs, such as .online. The introduction of the first country code top-level domain, IDN domain, took less than 2. And it's probably quite interesting to underline that in that process of swift adoption, no regulation was needed. But the one thing that still needs to be solved, and Emily already touched upon it, is the software layer problem, typically referred to as universal acceptance, or more importantly, the lack thereof. While on the DNS infrastructure, so that second layer in Emily's layered approach, IDN domains resolve. When a user wants to visit a website or when he wants to send an email, on the technical layer they work, but these names are not always recognized by applications and end-user software. Another example, in addition to the reference to Facebook registration, is typical online registration forms. Try to register an airline ticket with an IDN domain, and the automated checks will simply refuse you as a user because the format does not recognize any characters that are not the 26 ASCII letters or the 10 digits that we have been using for the last 2 decades. Another example, and very ironically, is that when some conference attendants try to print out their badge, even at conferences that are dealing with universal acceptance, the system simply fails to produce a proper printout of their non-Latin script name. My members are working relentlessly on to convince programmers and software companies to make necessary changes, but old habits die hard. One really silly problem of that universal acceptance thing is that programmers keep on using the same lists of pre-listed country codes that they've been using for 2 decades. The simple solution would be refresh your lists, go again to the standards organizations and copy the new list instead of just copying the old list from your previous version software. But that said, and we focused on IDNs here quite a bit so far, obviously because of the link with the DNS, but IDNs are just one part of encouraging multilingualism on the web. The other aspect is the use of geographic indicators such as country codes or geographic names. A great example is that one of the CENTR associate members is running and managing .cat. So obviously not the furry animal that attracts millions of views on YouTube, but the geographic code for Catalonia. And one of the many clever things that the inventors of the DNS decided 3 decades ago was that the policies for each zone would be set by that zone. So it's not a top-down decision. It's not ICANN or previously the US government who decides on who can get a .be or a .eu. No, it's the manager of the zone who decides these policies. So .cat could decide on who gets a .cat domain. And they have included a language requirement. Every .cat domain needs to be serving content in Catalan. And this may be an extreme example of how DNS could encourage multilingualism, but it shows the absolute importance of local policy setting. In general, in concluding, linguistic diversity is best promoted by local content, probably pretty obvious. But for local content, the use of a geographic name, city name, or CCTLD is so far the best indication of who that content is targeted to. Thank you so much for your attention.